Many people in the desert Southwest have very important migration stories that form parts of their histories. This is especially important for the Navajo, also known as the Diné, and the Apache. Both of those folks from Athabascan language groups up north migrate down long distances from the northwest portion of Canada and Alaska, and they come ultimately to the desert Southwest. You can see on my map essentially the Navajo are placed in the region of the Four Corners where those four corners come together. When this migration took place, it added to the pressures, the environmental, the climate pressures that were already in place for the people who were living there, and that in turn probably contributed to additional impetus for the Pueblo dwellers to go on their further migration to other locations a little bit more to the south. But the whole region, in other words, has migration stories as a part of its history, but especially for the Navajo. The Navajo, like the Apache, were individuals who tended to be nomadic or semi-nomadic. They were hunter-gatherers. When they arrive in the region of the Four Corners, then they come without the same kind of strong traditions for agricultural life living in a settled community, certainly in a Pueblo style, think apartment style complex. So they are going to embrace some of, but not all of, the traditions and ideas of the Pueblo people and blend them with their own. For example, we believe that they're going to borrow from the Pueblo dwellers, ideas of kachina or masked dancers who will be a part of the ritual performances that become embedded in Navajo religion and mythology. We believe that the Navajo migration took place somewhere 1200 to 1500. So over the course of generations, it took a very long time for the people to arrive here. One of the reasons I'd like you to know something about the Navajo is that they have the biggest reservation and population of Native Americans today. So you're certainly going to hear about these folks. This is a slide that shows you the scale of the Navajo reservation, and the reservation, which I'm going to admit is a little strange looking, is all of this territory that cuts through Arizona and Utah and New Mexico as well. It has a few holes in it. The biggest one is actually a reservation area for the Hopi, and then there are portions outside of it that also belong essentially to the Navajo. So it's not a cleanly divided area, but it does give us a little bit of a sense of the scale of this. And the Navajo even today do continue living somewhat more separate lifestyle than certainly the people who follow the traditions of the Pueblo. Perhaps the most famous creations coming out of the Navajo world and cosmology are the sand paintings. These are really traditional medicine. We have one of them in our textbook, and it's figure 2.21. I think we can do a little bit better with photography, so I've made some substitutes. The one in our textbook was taken, the photograph was taken in the 1930s, and the deal here is that some of the healers, the chanters as they're referred to, who create the sand paintings, were concerned that the chants that they knew and had memorized, in addition to or coupled with the images drawn in the sand, might possibly be lost. So what they did was work with anthropologists to record some of these so that they could be kept for future generations. So that's one of the reasons that we actually have the photography of these early rituals. Today, some of the sand paintings that we have great photographs of are demonstrations, so they're without the sacred context. But point being, we do have enough information to at least understand the purpose of the Navajo sand paintings and to kind of have an idea of how these worked. These sand paintings are essentially used in curing, but by curing, what I'm really suggesting is returning harmony to the community and in particular to the individual. It was believed that illness was an expression of the fact that an individual had lost balance, had lost harmony, and this is a process, a ritual that helps to restore that. One of the things I think you'll notice in looking at any sand paintings is that they have an incredible sense of symmetry and order, and that reflects the main purpose of this curing ceremony, to restore balance, to restore harmony, to restore order to the individual, and by doing that, also to restore it to the community. This aspect of ritual, we also suspect, might be at least derived from one of the aspects of Pueblo ritual, which the Navajo would have been exposed to after arriving in this region. And it would have been creating, I'm going to call them dry paintings, on kiva floors, flattened areas of the earth that were, think, prepared canvas. And then the painter would be working with sand, pebbles, pollen, natural materials that could form pigment that would flow from the hand as the hand was moved over the smooth floor surface, creating a temporary image. And that is one of the important parts to know about sand paintings. It is believed that they, as this process, the ritual process takes place, they receive power from the holy people. The holy people would be the terminology used by Navajo to speak about the sacred, the divine, the holy ones, the spirits, essentially the spirit realm, and the powers that are inherent in the realm of the divine. So it is the holy people who bring power to these drawings. The person who is sick or has an issue of some kind is taken into the painting. And at the very bottom left, you're going to see a chanter or a healer located here. This is the painting on the earth, and this is essentially the client or the person who is about to be healed. So they actually kind of come in and sit down on the painting itself, as if to absorb the power from the painting that has come in from the realm of the spirits. Because these paintings become so incredibly powerful, it's necessary to destroy them after the healing process has taken place, to protect everyone from the power that is in the painting. Consequently, these are temporary, these are ephemeral, they are never created to be permanent. The examples that you might find in museum stores today of sand paintings that have been glued to boards or to canvases are not sacred sand paintings. They are sand paintings that have been created, I'm going to call it tourist art, essentially, in the tradition of some of the images that might come out of the Navajo community, but not necessarily the sacred ones. We also have the same being true with Navajo individuals who demonstrate these in public. Those are not official curing ceremonies using the standard, and I think there are over 1,200 different images that can be drawn with accompanying chants that have to be memorized. This is a life's work to learn how to become a chanter. The healer, the medicine man, whatever you want to call him, or the chanter who chants the ritual lines that go along with the drawing process. So there's a verbal aspect to the process of creation here. He, and usually these are men, he is going to take an apprentice, somebody who is interested in doing this as a lifelong occupation, and that apprentice is going to work with him and take a great deal of time learning the chants and learning the rituals, which initially could take several days and also might involve mass dancers that were a part of the performance. And it would have been a performance as well as a creation of ritual and also a creation of art. The apprentice would be observing this and learning so that the apprentice ultimately could engage in the ceremony himself. The impermanent nature of these images also results from belief that the Navajo have that the transmission of the teaching of how to do this, in other words, the training of the chanter, originates with the holy people. The holy people taught the Navajo how to create sand paintings and use these sand paintings for cures. However, when the holy people did this, they did it by drawing in the clouds. Clouds themselves are impermanent, so they're not lasting. So the healer is going to work with materials that also are impermanent, with the goal in mind, just as the holy people intended, of restoring harmony and restoring balance. These are additional images. In the upper right, we have another older photograph that actually records the healing process with the chanter and his assistants. So an apprentice or two, or those who can help assist. Sometimes these sand paintings can become quite large, for example, so that it's going to be required that the chanter have helpers who can produce this picture, which is the last part of the healing ceremony when this is created. And there's our person about to be healed who's actually sitting on the painting. The other images I think are pretty obvious to you. This has become also famous in the 20th century and 21st because we think it was a source of inspiration for Jackson Pollock and for abstract expressionism. And I have pictures of Pollock in the bottom right, two of them. And right next to Pollock, I have the closest I could find, a Navajo healer who's doing a sand painting, who's holding his hand up and letting sand drip from his hand onto the ground, kind of like Pollock is allowing the paint to drip from his hand onto the canvas on which he's painting. Pollock is drawn to Navajo sand paintings. He comes from the region of the West anyway, so he's familiar with Native American traditions, but it's the idea of gestural work or gestural painting, using the body to move around the image. And I think for Pollock, who was using his art as a kind of healing process, a catharsis to release his own feelings, his emotions, the idea that sand paintings had a healing potential was also something that appealed to Jackson Pollock. I think he also liked the idea of getting down and close to the surface of the canvas and working directly with the materials. For Pollock and the Navajo, then, the process, and it's the process too, I want to stress, is intended to restore balance and harmony for the individual and also, as a result of that, the community.